Madonna. A name given to the famous pop star at birth turned out to be a name with worldwide recognition. Through her dancing, her feminist agenda, her sexual revolution, and her controversy, Madonna became a household name by her second album. Madonna's music is often disregarded in the musicological discourse surrounding her works. However, it's integral that musical analysis pays as much attention to her imagery as to her lyrics as to her chord progressions. Music is the ultimate glue of Madonna's pieces, regardless of the complexity or simplicity at hand, in a way that supports revolutionary societal advances. Inherently, the music cannot be separated from the medium, as the imagery and the filmography of her music videos plays a significant role in their reach. So, as musicologists, it's necessary to understand the impact of Madonna as both a visual artist and a musician. It's important to acknowledge a bit of Madonna's upbringing and background to really understand some of the artistic choices she made that led her to fame, success, and scrutiny that's worth analyzing as a musicologist. She was born Madonna Louise Ciccone as a first-generation immigrant to an Italian-American family who were devout Catholics. Religious theming is quite prevalent throughout Madonna's works, but the role of religion proves most impactful in Madonna's song, Like a Prayer. Like a Prayer is the premier single on the album of the same name, released in March of 1989. The genre can be considered pop rock, however, it's somewhat revolutionary in the sense because it employs a gospel choir as its main source of harmony. The song was released during the age of MTV, a music-sharing TV channel that focused on showcasing music videos with a range of artists, from underground hits to pop icons, of which Madonna earned the reigning title of Our Lady of MTV. Like a Prayer, the song, went certified platinum and has now amassed sales of over 1 million copies. Knowing that Madonna writes and co-writes most of her own material, it's important to regard this work in particular as a form of her expression that is not directly influenced by any industry figureheads. Susan McClary, in her collection of journals, Feminine Endings, dedicated a whole chapter to Madonna that's definitely worth a read. Her analysis of Madonna's music is as follows. Madonna's strong suit is her musical signification. She has beautifully employed traditional methods of organization and formulations of music to enhance the meanings of her text and her images. McClary's synthesis is best demonstrated in Madonna's use of keys and lyricism. Like a Prayer alternates between the relative keys of F major and D minor, of which they represent light and dark themes, respectively. D minor opens the piece, backed by an organ, which we all know is a staple in church music, which is contrasted with F major in the opening chorus, which is backed by a black gospel funk beat that can be described as driving and up-tempo. These key changes are actually visually represented, with Madonna being physically outside of the church when the key is D minor and physically inside the church when the key is F major, which is symbolic of the comfort and security that religion brings to her in this case. It also brings security and comfort to most people, and that is why Madonna changes the keys deceptively over time to disassociate the feelings of comfort and security found with the F major key with the church as the church becomes deceptive. The blurring of the lines with D minor disrupts the homely nature of the church, highlighting the disparity and racial equity found with ancient religions, specifically Catholicism and Protestantism. The former is the religion Madonna was raised in, the latter is associated with KKK. Just hold your horses, they're coming later. Of which both prove to be overwhelmingly problematic for both women and POC individuals. Both ideals presented here are something Madonna brings to the forefront of the conversation with Like a Prayer. Because the symbolism is reflected in the keys of this piece, the visual media is that much more impactful, especially to a predominantly Christian audience. It's important to note here that burning crosses is actually a significant part of Ku Klux Klan practices, used mainly as an intimidation tactic to scare African Americans and POC individuals. In this scene, she repeats a phrase heard earlier in the song. Life is a mystery. Everyone must stand alone. I hear you call my name, and it feels like home. This lyric has multiple meanings. It's first associated with her religious nature, in D minor, and the opening accompanied by her walking into the church. But the imagery is filled with optimism, which physically resolves by Madonna shutting the doors behind her, and sonically resolves by modulating into the key of F major. The second time this verse is sung, it's with a distinctly heavy guitar, driving forward in the key of D minor, which edges forward towards resolution. But it moves with an interrupted cadence from C to D minor, intensifying as the sonic tension builds. These key changes are smooth, and the use of D minor slowly dissipates, until it's further associated with deceptive cadences, as I demonstrated previously. These provide a means of avoiding closure and continue the feeling of driving dance rhythms, or a failure to settle down. As there's no cadential resolution, the video gets increasingly choppy and zoomed in onto Madonna's face, focusing on her anglicized features and the fire from the burning crosses in the background. The symbolism here is somewhat clear. My interpretation is that Madonna is feeling the weight of the world's injustices, like violence against women and racism towards POC individuals, both of which are demonstrated in this music video, continually compounding, until she eventually unifies with the community, represented in the gospel choir popping back in shot, back in sonically to resolve in perfect cadence. This false resolution is a short but sweet relief from the pains of inequality, which creep back in slowly, compounding further and further until the end of this music video, represented by the continual use of those deceptive or interrupted cadences. Madonna's deliberate choice to not end like a prayer with the uplifting key of F major signifies that work is not done. We are not equals quite yet. And that because of these inequalities, society itself is not whole. Deliberately saying that Madonna did not actively make musical choices that have symbolic meaning is both dismissive and ignorant. The symbolic imagery, coupled with alternating meanings of lyrics at hand, creates a complex narrative that clearly depicts struggle, both personal and societal. With lyrics acting as social commentary and tonicism creating an atmosphere, the visual representation of Like a Prayer enhances the messages brought forth. This multifaceted approach to symbolism is that of artistry, and like the way we analyze poetry with such high regard, popular music deserves to have its time to shine under the scrutinous, magnifying glass of analysis. The heavy religious theming and symbolism in this song sparked particular controversy that I think is yet to be rivaled. Gaga and Madonna are often compared, and a good idea to talk about is Lady Gaga's meat dress. Who could forget that iconic moment? However, they differ in great ways. I think what's most important here is that the meat dress might have turned noses, but Like a Prayer in 1989 turned a lot of heads and sparked a lot of conversations. Like a Prayer ended up being used in a Pepsi commercial in which the visuals were much more tame than that of the original. Its backing to a seemingly harmless advertisement ended with Pepsi canceling their support to Madonna's upcoming world tour because of the slew of hatred they received specifically from religious communities. Understandably, there are a few shortcomings with a musicological approach to analyzing Madonna, specifically given the constraints of this presentation. Within these 10-minute boundaries, I'm restricted from diving into the greater complexity lying within Like a Prayer. Yet, it's also important to recognize that Madonna has released 4 studio albums that have varying degrees of content depth and complexity, all of which I'm unable to speak on today. This beefy discography follows suit in its heavy use of symbolism. However, it may be at different levels of prevalence and significance compared to the work at hand. What's important to recognize is that regardless of the pitfalls of this piece, it raises a few integral questions about how to approach popular music, particularly that of feminine icons, from a musicology standpoint. There are a few more factors to consider when discussing popular music, as its popularity, part of the namesake of course, plays an important role in its exposure, reception, and legacy. So a socio-musicology perspective is almost necessary. Madonna's lasting presence in our society makes her case the most formidable for musicologists to critically analyze and experiment. Thank you for your time today.
Now I'm dancing.